When Rome fell in 476 AD, the world didn't end. In fact, for the people living in Constantinople, life went on much as it had before. The Eastern Roman Empire, which we now call the Byzantine Empire, would survive for another 1,000 years, outlasting its Western counterpart by a millennium. This is the story of how they did it. The survival of the Byzantine Empire is one of history's most remarkable achievements. While barbarian kingdoms carved up Western Europe, Constantinople stood as a beacon of Roman civilization, wealth, and power. The Byzantines didn't just survive, they thrived, creating one of the most sophisticated civilizations the world has ever known. But their success wasn't inevitable. It was the result of geography, leadership, innovation, and more than a little bit of luck. Let's start with the most obvious advantage: Constantinople itself. When Constantine the Great chose the ancient Greek city of Byzantium as his new capital in 330 AD, he picked one of the most defensible locations in the world. The city sat on a rocky peninsula, surrounded by water on three sides. To the south lay the Sea of Marmara, to the east the Bosporus Strait, and to the north the Golden Horn, a natural harbour that could shelter the entire Byzantine fleet. Attacking Constantinople from the sea was nearly impossible. The currents in the Bosporus were treacherous, making naval assaults extremely difficult. The Byzantines protected the Golden Horn with a massive chain that stretched 300 metres across the harbour entrance. When enemies approached, they simply raised the chain, and no ship could pass. The sea walls themselves were formidable, rising directly from the water and bristling with defensive towers. But the real masterpiece of Byzantine defensive engineering was the Theodosian walls. Built in the early 5th century under Emperor Theodosius II, these walls protected the landward side of Constantinople. They weren't just walls, they were a defensive system unlike anything the world had seen. The outermost defence was a moat, 20 metres wide and 7 metres deep. Behind that stood an outer wall 9 metres high, and behind that rose the main wall, 12 metres high and 6 metres thick, studded with 96 towers that allowed defenders to rain down arrows and projectiles on any attacker. The walls were so effective that they protected Constantinople for over 1,000 years. In 447, when a massive earthquake destroyed large sections of the walls and Attila the Hun was marching toward the city, the Byzantines rebuilt the entire system in just 60 days. They didn't just repair what was broken, they added the second wall and the moat, making the defences even stronger. When Attila heard about this, he turned away. Constantinople was simply too difficult to conquer. The city's location offered another crucial advantage. It controlled the trade routes between Europe and Asia. Every merchant ship travelling between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean had to pass through the Bosporus, and Constantinople sat right at that choke point. The Byzantines taxed this trade heavily, and the revenue poured into the imperial treasury. While Western European cities were shrinking, Constantinople boasted a population of 500,000 people, making it the largest and wealthiest city in Europe. But walls and geography alone don't explain Byzantine survival. The empire also benefited from a far more efficient government than its Western counterpart. While the West had fragmented into competing power centres, with wealthy aristocrats undermining imperial authority, the Byzantine government maintained a strong, centralised bureaucracy. The Byzantine tax system was remarkably effective. Each year, the imperial government in Constantinople collected roughly £270,000 of gold in taxes. Compare that to the Western Roman Empire, which collected only about £20,000. This massive revenue allowed the Byzantines to maintain professional armies, build impressive fortifications, and fund a sophisticated diplomatic apparatus. The Byzantine bureaucracy was staffed by educated professionals who made careers out of government service. One of their most innovative practices was the use of eunuchs in high administrative positions. This might seem strange to us today, but it was actually quite clever. Eunuchs couldn't have children, which meant they couldn't establish family dynasties or pass their positions to heirs. This made them more loyal to the emperor and less likely to plot rebellion. Eunuchs served as generals, administrators, and even as chief advisors to emperors. The empire was divided into administrative units called themes. Each theme was responsible for both civil administration and military defense of its region. The theme system created a direct connection between the land, the people who lived on it, and the soldiers who defended it. Soldiers were given land in exchange for military service, which meant they had a personal stake in defending their territory. This system proved far more effective than relying on mercenaries or a distant professional army. Byzantine diplomacy was equally sophisticated. The empire maintained what historians call the Bureau of Barbarians, an intelligence agency that gathered detailed information about neighboring peoples and kingdoms. Before any diplomatic mission, Byzantine ambassadors were thoroughly briefed on the culture, customs, and political situation of the place they were visiting. They knew who could be bribed, who held real power, and what would impress or intimidate their hosts. The Byzantines were masters of playing their enemies against each other. They would ally with one barbarian tribe to fight another, then switch sides when it suited them. They used marriage alliances, bribes, and the promise of imperial titles to keep potential enemies in check. Often, it was cheaper to pay a tribe not to attack than to fight a war. The Byzantines understood that gold spent on diplomacy was gold saved on warfare. When foreign dignitaries visited Constantinople, the Byzantines staged elaborate ceremonies designed to awe and intimidate. Visitors would be led through the massive Theodosian walls, past the wealthy markets and impressive public buildings, and finally to the Great Palace. There, they would witness the emperor seated on a throne that could be mechanically raised toward the ceiling, surrounded by golden lions that roared and golden birds that sang, all powered by hidden mechanisms. The message was clear. Constantinople was the center of civilization, and the emperor was the most powerful ruler on earth. Religion played a crucial role in Byzantine survival. The emperor wasn't just a political leader, he was God's representative on earth. This gave him an authority that went beyond mere military power. The Byzantine emperor was both the head of state and the head of the church, a system called Caesaropapism. When the emperor spoke on religious matters, he spoke with divine authority. This fusion of religious and political power created a strong sense of unity and purpose. Byzantine soldiers believed they were fighting for God as well as the emperor. When Constantinople was under siege, the defenders would display icons of the Virgin Mary on the walls, believing that she would protect the city. This faith gave them courage and determination in the face of overwhelming odds. The Byzantine Church also helped maintain Roman identity in the East. While the West fragmented into various Germanic kingdoms, each with its own culture and language, the Byzantine Empire maintained a unified Greek-speaking Christian culture. The Church provided education, social services, and a common set of beliefs that bound the empire together. One of the greatest Byzantine emperors was Justinian I, who ruled from 527 to 565. Justinian was the last emperor to speak Latin as his first language, and he was determined to restore the glory of Rome. He launched ambitious military campaigns to reconquer the lost Western territories, and he succeeded in retaking North Africa from the Vandals and Italy from the Ostrogoths. But Justinian's greatest legacy wasn't military, it was legal. He ordered his legal experts to compile and organize all of Roman law, eliminating contradictions and outdated provisions. The result was the Corpus Juris Civilis, the body of civil law, which became the foundation for legal systems throughout Europe. Even today, most European legal codes can trace their origins back to Justinian's codification. Justinian was also a great builder. He constructed the Hagia Sophia, one of the most magnificent buildings ever created. For nearly 1,000 years, it was the largest cathedral in the world, and its massive dome seemed to float impossibly above the nave. When Justinian first entered the completed building, he reportedly exclaimed, "Solomon, I have surpassed you." The Hagia Sophia stood as a symbol of Byzantine power and sophistication, and it still stands today in Istanbul. Justinian's wife, Theodora, was equally remarkable. She had risen from humble origins as an actress and courtesan to become empress, and she used her position to expand women's rights and protect the vulnerable. She helped Justinian make crucial decisions, and in one famous incident, she prevented him from fleeing during a massive riot, convincing him to stand and fight. Her courage may have saved his reign. Byzantine military innovation was another key to survival. The empire's armies were professional, well-trained, and equipped with the best weapons and armor available. Byzantine cavalry, known as cataphracts, were heavily armored horsemen who could smash through enemy formations. The empire also maintained a powerful navy that controlled the Mediterranean sea lanes. But the Byzantines' most famous weapon was Greek fire, a liquid incendiary that could burn on water. The exact formula was a closely guarded state secret, and even today, historians aren't entirely sure what it contained. It was probably a mixture of petroleum, sulfur, and other chemicals projected through bronze tubes mounted on ships. When Greek fire hit enemy vessels, it created an inferno that couldn't be extinguished with water. The psychological impact was devastating. Imagine facing a weapon that seemed to defy the laws of nature. Greek fire saved Constantinople during two major Arab sieges in the 7th and 8th centuries. The Arab fleets, which had conquered vast territories across the Middle East and North Africa, were stopped cold by this terrifying weapon. Without Greek fire, Constantinople might have fallen, and the history of Europe would have been very different. The Byzantines also benefited from good fortune in the threats they faced. While the Western Roman Empire was overwhelmed by wave after wave of barbarian invasions, the Eastern Empire faced fewer immediate threats. The Goths, Vandals, and Franks all went west. The Huns, who terrorized both halves of the empire, established their short-lived empire in the west before collapsing. The Byzantine Empire's greatest rival was Persia. But fortunately for the Byzantines, Persia went through a period of relative peace during the 5th century. This gave the Eastern Empire time to consolidate its power and build up its defences. When Persia did launch major invasions in the 6th and 7th centuries, the Byzantines were strong enough to survive, though the wars were devastating. The empire also benefited from maintaining a strong sense of Roman identity. While Western Europeans began to think of themselves as Franks, Goths, or Lombards, the people of the Byzantine Empire continued to call themselves Romans. This shared identity, reinforced by the Greek language and Orthodox Christianity, helped hold the empire together through centuries of challenges. Byzantine culture was sophisticated and cosmopolitan. Constantinople was a centre of learning, where scholars preserved and studied ancient Greek and Roman texts. Byzantine artists created stunning mosaics and icons. Byzantine architects developed new building techniques, including the pendentive dome that allowed them to place a circular dome on a square building. Byzantine craftsmen produced silk, glassware, and metalwork that was prized throughout the known world. The empire's educational system was far more advanced than anything in Western Europe. Constantinople had schools of higher learning where students studied philosophy, mathematics, medicine, and law. Literacy rates were higher in the Byzantine Empire than anywhere else in medieval Europe. This emphasis on education created a class of skilled administrators, diplomats, and military officers who could manage the complex machinery of empire. The Byzantine economy was equally sophisticated. The empire maintained a stable gold currency, the solidus, which was accepted throughout the Mediterranean world. Byzantine merchants traded with India, China, and sub-Saharan Africa, bringing exotic goods to Constantinople's markets. The empire controlled the production of silk, which had been smuggled out of China in the 6th century, giving them a monopoly on this luxury fabric in Europe. But Byzantine survival wasn't just about strength. It was also about flexibility and adaptation. When the empire lost its wealthy provinces in Syria and Egypt to Arab conquest in the 7th century, it could have collapsed. Instead, the Byzantines adapted. They reorganized their military around the theme system, developed new defensive strategies, and focused on holding their core territories in Anatolia and the Balkans. The empire went through cycles of expansion and contraction. After the devastating losses of the 7th century, the Byzantines gradually recovered. Under the Macedonian dynasty in the 10th and 11th centuries, the empire experienced a golden age. Byzantine armies pushed back the Arabs, reconquered parts of Syria, and expanded into the Balkans. Constantinople reached the height of its wealth and power, and Byzantine culture flourished. Even when the empire faced disaster, it showed remarkable resilience. In 1204, the Fourth Crusade, which was supposed to fight Muslims in the Holy Land, instead attacked and sacked Constantinople. The Crusaders divided the Byzantine Empire among themselves, creating a Latin Empire in Constantinople. But Byzantine successor states survived in exile, and in 1261 they recaptured Constantinople and restored the empire. The final centuries of Byzantine history were a long, slow decline. The empire lost territory to the Ottoman Turks, who gradually conquered Anatolia and the Balkans. By the 15th century, the Byzantine Empire consisted of little more than Constantinople itself and a few scattered territories. But even in decline, the city remained a centre of learning and culture. In 1453, Sultan Mehmed II of the Ottoman Empire laid siege to Constantinople with a massive army and powerful cannons. The Byzantines, led by Emperor Constantine XI, defended their city with desperate courage. For nearly 2 months, they held out against overwhelming odds. But on May 29, 1453, the Ottomans finally breached the Theodosian walls. Constantine XI died fighting alongside his soldiers, and the Byzantine Empire came to an end. But the legacy of Byzantium lived on. Byzantine scholars fleeing the Ottoman conquest brought ancient Greek texts to Western Europe, helping to spark the Renaissance. Byzantine art and architecture influenced Islamic, Russian, and Western European culture. Byzantine law shaped European legal systems, and the idea of Byzantium, a Christian empire that preserved Roman civilization for 1,000 years after Rome itself had fallen, continues to fascinate us today. The Byzantine Empire survived for a millennium because of a unique combination of factors: an impregnable capital, efficient government, sophisticated diplomacy, military innovation, religious unity, and cultural cohesion. But perhaps most importantly, the Byzantines survived because they adapted to changing circumstances while maintaining their core identity as Romans. They were flexible enough to change when necessary, but strong enough to preserve what mattered most. The story of Byzantine survival is a reminder that civilizations don't just succeed through military might or economic power. They succeed through institutions, ideas, and the determination of people who believe in something larger than themselves. For 1,000 years, the Byzantines kept the flame of Roman civilization burning in the East, and in doing so, they shaped the world we live in today.